The suitcase with the rose. My friend died because of a horrible joke. I wish I had never learned what really went wrong. In my opinion, the most terrifying deaths are accidental ones. Last week, I read about a mother who accidentally smothered her newborn in her sleep. Every year, babies die after being left in hot cars. And then there are stories about kids playing games, like that boy who hid inside a broken freezer during hide-and-seek and suffocated. Can you imagine that? Imagining that you were responsible for something like that? To me, that's far more horrifying than any paranormal terror. I would rather face a ghost than live with the guilt of accidentally harming someone. My wife, Wait, is the complete opposite. Accidents don't scare her, but she's terrified of demon horror movies and vengeful spirits. I tell her, those things aren't real, so why be afraid? She replies that accidents have no malicious intent, which makes them less frightening than murderous spirits that could be real. In that, she's probably right, about the lack of intent. But not about ghosts. They don't exist. And if they did, my best friend would definitely be haunting me. In a way, she already does. Whenever I read about jokes that went wrong, my breath catches. Guilt tightens around my chest. Years have passed, and I still don't know whether it was my fault. I was never blamed. My friends say, stop blaming yourself. But how can you? How do you move on without knowing whether it was you? Rose got into the suitcase herself. Lakeisha and I helped her. We were all drunk, giggling. She wanted to surprise Bolin. She had a huge secret crush on him. Let me explain. We were at a party. Our group had been friends for years. We rented a cabin. There was me, my wife Wait, back then she was just the woman I adored, and her friends Bolin, Tucker, and JB. The girls were my closest friends, Lakeisha, Rose, and Kay. There were others we met during a hike earlier that day, but I've forgotten their names. All I remember is that we drank a lot. And Rose, she was in her flirtatious phase. Rose was my best friend, but she wasn't perfect. She was like a butterfly, sipping nectar from every flower. A real heartbreaker, beautiful, passionate. I envied the attention she received, and admired it at the same time. Anyone who was with her fell head over heels, like she was the love of their life. But she never committed. Now, her eyes were on Bolin. I don't remember whose idea it was to hide her in the suitcase, mine or hers. All the suitcases were in the basement because when we arrived at the cabin, we left them there. Lakeisha joked that Bolin's suitcase was big enough to hide a body. That's when either Rose or I suggested she hide inside it. To prank Bolin, Rose decided to wear lingerie. When Bolin carried the suitcase to his room and opened it, he'd get a sexy surprise. We were stupid. Very stupid. None of us were thinking clearly, especially while drunk. When Rose squeezed herself inside, complaining that her hair was caught in the zipper, Lakeisha and I went to get the others so they could carry the bags upstairs. I remember Bolin carried my suitcase. I stayed outside in a tent with Kay. There weren't enough rooms in the house, and we wanted to sleep under the stars. Kay didn't know about the prank, so she was confused when I insisted Bolin check his suitcase. After he left, I told Kay about Rose. Since Kay was sober, she told me we should go check if Rose was stuck. I went to make sure the suitcase wasn't still at the bottom of the stairs. At least, I thought I did. But I was drunk. Later, while we were all outside watching fireworks, I noticed Bolin wasn't there and asked Wait where he'd gone. Bolin had gone to his room early. When he didn't come back, Lakeisha and I assumed Rose was with him, that her lingerie trick had worked. The morning after. In the morning, when Bolin came downstairs, Lakeisha and I smirked and asked him about his night. He looked confused. Then Lakeisha asked where Rose was. He still didn't understand. "What about your suitcase?" she asked. "You opened it, right?" Bolin said someone had already put all his clothes into the closet for some reason, and he never even saw the suitcase. "You mean, you never opened it?" Lakeisha asked. Panic spread through my body. Oh God. Lakeisha told him that we'd unpacked his clothes and that Rose had hidden inside, hoping to surprise him in lingerie. But none of us knew where Rose was. We rushed to wake everyone, hoping someone had seen her during the night. I kept thinking, I checked. I swear I checked. Prayers ran through my head, but I was drunk. I wasn't sure anymore if I had actually checked. I went down to the basement. The suitcase was there. Still at the bottom of the stairs. Exactly where we'd left it when we zipped Rose inside the night before. No one wanted to open it. The guys argued over who had left it there. JB said he tried to carry it but noticed how heavy it was and asked someone else to take it. Everyone thought someone else would check the suitcase. Bolin didn't check because he found his clothes already in the closet. The truth. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I stayed outside when Lakeisha reached for the zipper. Wait came out and sat with me. She said dead bodies, blood, and things like that scared her. While the others opened the suitcase, we sat outside. We heard gasps. Whispering. Her fingers tightened around mine. I covered my face with my hands and cried. Of course, Rose suffocated. But it took a long time. The police wondered why no one heard her screams. Kay shyly mentioned the fireworks. A joke that went wrong, the authorities concluded. My friend said, then and now, that Rose bore some responsibility. She made the decision herself. We were all a little guilty, but no one was fully responsible. But it was my hand that closed the zipper. I lay in bed, thinking about her suffocating. Why didn't she scream? Why didn't we hear the muffled cries? I imagine her trapped in the darkness, her pleas unanswered, and I can't breathe. Why I'm writing this. This morning, I saw the news. A woman was found on the beach, strangled, wearing lingerie. Wait changed the channel. When I asked why, she said she thought it might upset me. Why? I asked. You said it was just a joke. She paused. I thought of Rose, she said. You know, the lingerie. That's when it hit me. I realized that after Rose died, we all stopped talking about her. Her death became a footnote in the news. The details were never published. In our group, her death became taboo, as if she had never existed. We silently agreed to forget her. But the more I think about that news story, the stronger I feel that day returning. That feeling at the top of the stairs, like looking down and seeing something you don't want to see. That sense of impending doom. And it makes me sick, because Wait knew Rose too. She remembered her. And now I'm more and more certain. I looked down the stairs before the fireworks, and the suitcase wasn't there. So now I keep asking myself. If Wait didn't see what was inside the suitcase, didn't open it, didn't touch it, how did she know Rose was wearing lingerie when she died? My son came out of nowhere. My neighbors say they've known my son for years. But I've never had children. How old is he now? My neighbor asked. 8? 9? I stared at her, completely confused. She noticed my expression. Your sweet little boy, she continued. I saw him riding his bike down the road. He must be in 4th grade by now. Yes, Mrs. Bebbage was elderly, but I'd never noticed any signs of dementia before. I didn't know what to say. She looked at me with her head tilted, as if I was the one confused. I awkwardly opened my mouth. Yes, my boy. She beamed. Yes, he's in 4th grade, right? Yes, I forced out. 4th. What a lovely boy, she smiled, returning to her flowers. It was strange. And sad. I hoped it was just a slip of the tongue, not the beginning of dementia. I carried my groceries inside. The boy in my kitchen. After a long day of teaching, I just wanted to sit down and relax. But as soon as I took off one shoe, I smelled something burning. Melted cheese. What the hell? I rushed into the kitchen and nearly fell, partly because I had one shoe on, but mostly because there was a skinny boy standing at the stove, cooking macaroni and cheese. I screamed. Then instinct kicked in, my teacher voice. Who are you? What are you doing here? The boy with thin blonde hair turned toward me. His expression mirrored my own shock. Dad, what do you mean? He said. I'm home. I'm right here. He looked frightened. Confused. And there was something strange about his speech. Do you want some mac and cheese, Dad? Eat, Dad. A Russian accent. I noticed he was wearing an oversized t-shirt, mine. He was wearing my clothes. I raised my hands like I do in class to calm students. Listen. I don't know who you are or what this means. The boy's eyes widened in fear as he stirred the food with a wooden spoon. It's mac and cheese, Dad. Your favorite, with pepper and cheese. Don't you remember? His name was Dmitri. He claimed I was his father. There was a mother somewhere, but he barely remembered her, only me. You've always been Dad, he said. My whole life. All my life. I tried to talk calmly. I sat across from him and explained that this couldn't be real. Every time, it ended the same way. He hugged me, crying, begging me to remember. It got worse. The confusion deepened when my mother called. How's my grandson? She asked. I froze. The conversation became awkward as I tried to explain. Mom, what are you talking about? I don't have a son. I never have. She gasped, then laughed. She scolded me, saying I shouldn't joke about things like that, because of course I had always had a son, a smart boy who was turning 9 this weekend. I hung up. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, frozen, staring at that strange, hopeful Slavic boy. For the next 10 minutes, all I did was ask where his parents were. And with every question, he became more frightened, like a real child. Again and again, he kept saying the same thing. Dad, how could you forget me? That's how we reached a dead end. So I decided to play along. I took a drink from the press to clear my head and told him that I must be confused from exhaustion. I apologized for not remembering that I was his father. He immediately brightened. It's okay, Dad. It's okay, he said, hugging me. You always work so much. The tension eased a little. Dmitri finished cooking the macaroni and served himself a bowl. I politely declined and just watched him eat. And he watched me watching him. "You're not mad anymore? Everything's okay?" he asked in his strange accent. "No," I replied. "I'm not mad. Just a little confused." His eyes lit up. Hope flickered in them. "So we can be like before now? Normal?" A chill ran down my spine. I didn't know what to say, but for some reason I really didn't want to say, "Yes, everything's normal now." Because it wasn't normal. Not at all. This child was not my son. He began picking at his food, trembling like a frightened mouse waiting to be comforted. "Everything will be fine," I finally said. "Don't worry. Finish your macaroni." To my horror, I discovered that Dmitri had his own room. My home office was gone. In its place was an empty room with clay walls, linen curtains, old wooden toys, and a simple bed. The air smelled of bread and earth. I watched him play with blocks and spinning tops. About 30 minutes later, he yawned and said he wanted to sleep. Putting him to bed was the strangest thing of all. He changed clothes, climbed into his straw mattress, and asked me to hold his hand. Dimitri's fingers were cold, slightly damp. It felt unnatural to comfort a child as if he were my own, but somehow it worked. He relaxed and grew still. No lullabies. No bedtime stories. Just holding his hand for a minute. "Thank you, Dad. I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad you're my dad. Good night." I carefully left the room, leaving the door slightly open. Through the crack, I watched as, around 9:30, he was already breathing softly like a sleeping child. He was asleep. With caution, I called Pet, a colleague I was close to. Her reaction was the same as my mother's. "Harlan, of course you have a son, from your marriage to Svetlana." "Who?" I asked. "Svetlana. You met her in Moscow when you were traveling through Europe." "Yes, I really did give lectures in England, Germany, and Russia on a grant 15 years ago," I said. "But I was only in Moscow for 3 days. I never met any Svetlana." "Don't make things up, Harlan," Lopet snapped irritably. "You were together for years." "How many years?" "Listen, I know the divorce was hard on you, but don't pretend your ex-wife never existed." "I'm not pretending. I'm serious. I don't remember her." "Then you need to get some sleep." I took my second espresso of the night. But I did sleep. "Everything's fine." "Then I don't understand what kind of joke this is." "Stop it, it's creepy." "I'm not joking." "Fine. I'll see you tomorrow at the birthday." "What birthday?" "Your son's birthday." "Jesus, Harlan. Good night. And get some rest already." I didn't sleep that night. I searched for evidence, in closets, drawers, old folders. I found receipts for school supplies, children's clothes, groceries. Photos of Dmitri at different ages hung on the walls, as if reality itself had rearranged itself into a new version of my life. The harder I tried to prove that I wasn't a father, the more evidence appeared that I was. Dmitri woke me up. I had fallen asleep on the couch in the living room. He said Uncle Boris had arrived. Uncle Boris. I looked out the window. A huge blond man stood on the porch, smiling warmly. Behind him were other people, talking to each other in Russian. "Hello, Harlan," he shouted through the glass. We came for the birthday. They all looked happy, waving at me, inviting me to open the door. They were wearing long shirts and fabric trousers, some kind of traditional clothing. I was completely frozen. I just nodded and quietly stepped back into the kitchen. Dmitri came up and pulled on my hand. Dad, come on. We have to let them in. I don't know any of them. But Dad, that's Uncle Boris. Uncle Boris. I yanked my hand away. One thing is playing along with a child for the night, but letting a crowd of strangers into my house is something else entirely. Early in the morning, Dmitri frowned. I'll open it myself. Wait, stop, I said, grabbing his shoulder. He pulled away. Let go. We tugged at each other, and the scene fully revealed itself to the people outside the window. Boris stared with huge, rounded eyes. Dmitri pulled harder. I pulled back. He slipped and hit his head on the table. Boris shouted something in Russian. Someone shouted back. I heard someone tug at the door. Dmitri, stop. I yelled. Let's just wait 1 minute. You're hurting me, Dad. Ow. The lock clicked. Footsteps burst into the house. I released my son and saw 3 large Slavic men with grim faces enter the room. Dmitri hid behind them. Is everything all right? Boris asked, looking down through tangled blonde hair. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm just very confused. Confused? Why did you hit Dmitri? The boy tugged at his uncle's sleeve and whispered something in Russian. Boris frowned. Before I could explain anything, thin hands pushed the men aside, and a woman stepped into the doorway. Her eyes were red. Merciless. Everything inside me already knew who she was. Svetlana. She wore a loose brown garment, more like draped fabric than clothing. Her skin was almost translucent, pale, whitish, like someone with extreme albinism. Harlan, she said, stretching my name into 3 syllables. Harlan. I have never felt such primal fear toward another human being. She seemed woven from the darkest corners of memory. Images flashed before my eyes. Her arms around me in Moscow, near Red Square. Whispering something beneath St. Basil's Cathedral. Svetlana placed her hand on Dmitri's shoulder and looked up at me. Tell him everything will be like before. Tell him everything will be normal. No. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. Barefoot, still wearing yesterday's clothes, I ran to the back door, burst outside, and sprinted to my car. While this new family tried to understand what was happening, I was already in my Subaru, slamming the gas pedal to the floor. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and swore my house didn't look like a house anymore. It was a hut, with a straw roof. Back at the university, I locked myself in my office and cancelled all lectures and meetings for a week, citing personal reasons. No one in the department knew I had a son. There wasn't a single photo in my office. Not a single Russian surname in my documents. When I asked Pet about our conversation from the day before, she replied. What conversation? My mother said the same. With my heart pounding, I returned home the next day. The moment I crossed the threshold, I knew everything was back to normal. No photos of Dmitri. No disturbing albums. The room with clay walls was once again my regular office. To this day, I don't understand what happened that strange September weekend. But after researching archives and old records, I've begun to think that back in Moscow, I truly encountered something ancient, some old curse, a wandering soul, or a black witch. A black witch hiding beneath the guise of an ordinary woman. Since then, nothing strange has happened in the house. But sometimes, when I talk to Mrs. Bebbage, I notice she remembers my son perfectly. "Such a sweet boy," she says. She always waves when she sees me. Can you imagine? Once, she even treated me to something. I think it was macaroni and cheese. My wife is convinced I've been replaced. 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 Please help me. I don't know what to do. Yes, I know it sounds insane. I guess I should start with some background. God, it's so hard to remember those simple, happy times before everything went wrong. I met my wife, Catherine, when she was 24 and I was 28. We lived in a small town in Kentucky, so small it's barely even on the map. Tiny population. Everyone knew everyone. I worked as an electrician my whole life. First at a factory, then I opened my own small business, repairs, wiring, private jobs. My love life was a disaster until I met her. Catherine worked as an elementary school teacher. She smiled at every child, was kind and polite to everyone. She was like a beam of light to me, the one, the real one. I loved her for her simplicity. She knew how to enjoy the little things, morning coffee, the smell of wet grass, a cheap movie on the couch. We didn't have much money, but we were happy. We had a house. A dog. Peace. And that feeling that everything was right, that everything would be okay. In the evenings, I fixed things while she wrote lesson plans and knitted. Sometimes we just sat in silence, listening to crickets. Sometimes we talked until morning about everything, even making up names for future children. Back then, it felt like life had finally found its meaning. The problem started about 2 months ago. At first, it was small things. She began sleeping poorly. Sometimes I caught strange looks from her, as if there was something in my face that frightened her. I asked if everything was all right. She smiled and said, "Sorry, sorry. I'm just tired. The kids at school are driving me crazy." But gradually, it got worse. I can't even say exactly when she started sleeping less, not because she couldn't, but because she was afraid to fall asleep. I asked what was wrong. She said everything was fine. Then suddenly, she would get up at night and leave the bedroom, going into another room. She wouldn't return until morning. She had nightmares, but she never told me what they were about. One night, I snapped. "You have to understand. I was just worried about my wife." Lack of sleep had changed her. Dark circles formed under her eyes. They were red, inflamed. Her skin looked unhealthy, drawn tight over her face, and she had lost weight. When I tried to help, she pushed me away. So I sat her down in front of me and asked her directly what she was dreaming about. She was silent for a long time. She trembled, stared at me from under her brow as if she were afraid, and then she started crying and whispered, "There's a man in my dreams. God, Tom, I'm scared." I tried to hug her, but when I reached out, she flinched, as if I had frightened her. After that, it seemed like things got a little better. How wrong I was. She stopped asking how my day had gone. She sat staring out the window, barely speaking. Her sentences became short and dry. She constantly disappeared into the bathroom or the kitchen, locking herself inside. And her eyes. If before they had been bright green, alive, warm, now they were cold. There was no anger in them. No hatred. Only distrust. As if she wasn't really seeing me. A week later, I started feeling anxious, like something was burning under my skin. And then I realized. She was studying me. When I drank coffee, I could feel her gaze. I'd look up, she'd immediately turn away, as if by accident. But her fingers would tremble, a knife frozen above the cutting board. When I stepped outside to smoke, I'd notice her watching me from behind the curtain. When I showered, I'd catch her eyes in the reflection, and she'd flee at once. Sometimes I woke up at night and saw her standing in the doorway, silently staring at me. She almost stopped speaking altogether. She wrote something in a notebook and hid it the moment I entered the room. Photographs began disappearing from their frames. She talked to someone on the phone, and immediately hung up whenever I appeared. I made an appointment with a psychologist, but she refused. She said she was afraid to be near me. Everything was happening too fast. It felt like just yesterday we were lying under the stars, and now this. Every day, it only got worse. Sometimes she asked me to sleep on the couch. I agreed, hoping it would help. It didn't. Her fear only grew. It got to the point where, when I tried to hug her, she screamed. "Don't come near me." She recoiled as if I were about to hurt her. That night, I understood, I had to find out what was happening, even if it meant taking her to a doctor afterward. I pretended to be asleep when she appeared in the doorway again. At first, she just stood there. Then she slowly stepped closer. Soft, careful footsteps. She stopped at the foot of the bed. For several seconds, there was silence, thick, dead silence, broken only by her uneven breathing. I felt her gaze. Not just watching. Comparing. And that was when I became truly afraid. Something cold and sticky coiled inside me. My wife had become someone else. The bed creaked slightly as she sat on the edge. The air grew dense, like before a thunderstorm. I felt her stare pressing against my skin. Then cold fingers touched my wrist. They held it for a few seconds. Then suddenly let go, as if burned. And softly, almost soundlessly, she whispered. "Pulse is faster than Tom's." My heart clenched so hard I nearly flinched. She leaned closer. I heard her breathing, short, uneven. She smelled of lavender and something sour that sent chills down my spine. Her lips barely moved. I remember. Tom had a scar. Right here. She touched my cheek. And you don't. I clenched my teeth so I wouldn't gasp. Those few seconds stretched into eternity. What scar? I had never had a scar on my cheek. I knew that for a fact. I wanted to scream. To run. To disappear. But I stayed still, until I heard her quiet sob and footsteps fading into the darkness. The door slammed. I opened my eyes. My heart was pounding like a mad thing. I didn't sleep a single minute until morning. I simply couldn't. In the morning, I left for work earlier than usual. All day, I was afraid to go home. But that evening, at dinner, I gathered my courage and said, "Kate, we need to talk. What is happening to you?" She clenched her fork until her knuckles turned white, and looked straight into my eyes. "Tom, you're acting strange." "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Sometimes you look different. Sometimes your voice isn't the same. Even your smell is different." I didn't know what to say. My head was a mess. I laughed nervously. "Kate, maybe you're imagining things?" "I don't know, Tom," she said quietly. I glanced at the knife rack. There was an empty patch of dust where the largest knife should have been, the one we always used. For bread. For meat. For everything. I knew for a fact it had been there before that night. My heart dropped. I looked up. Kate was staring straight at me, unblinking. And then I realized, she could kill me. The next morning she left for work, and I began searching the house like an animal in a cage. I barely slept for 2 days. I knew I had to leave. I knew I needed to take her to a doctor. But she was my wife. I loved her. She had to understand that I was me. I turned the entire house upside down, searching for anything that could explain what was happening to her. And finally, I found it. After an hour of digging through the closet, behind a stack of sweaters, there stood an old wooden box, cracked, with its lid slightly ajar. When I opened it, a thick notebook fell out. It smelled of coffee and sweat. Her name and initials were written on the cover. My heart froze. It was her diary. The paper was soft, damp from fingers. The handwriting was familiar, but now uneven, jerky. The lines were stained, as if from tears. I began to read. "He is sleeping. I am standing by the bed, watching him. He looks like Tom, but it's not him. Tom had a scar on his left arm from that incident by the river. This one's skin is smooth. He smiles, but the smile is empty. Something has taken his place. I count the days. I mark the steps. If the real Tom is alive, where is he?" Nausea rose in my throat. With every page, her handwriting grew more frantic, more torn. I tested how he speaks. He says, "I love you," in the same tone, but without warmth. Not like before. Tom smelled like vanilla. This one smells like dust and cheap cologne. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My knees trembled. The air felt like it was tightening around me, pulling like a noose. I turned the last page. I cannot allow this creature to remain in our home. It wears his smile. His name. I tried talking. Begging. It only smiles and says the right words. It doesn't defend itself, probably because it isn't afraid. His right hand twitches when it lies. I could have killed it today. But for some reason, I couldn't. For Tom's sake, I must not let the monster wear his skin. My palms were slick with sweat. My whole body was drenched, even though the room was cold. I placed the diary on the bed and sat down. My head was buzzing. I couldn't comprehend that my wife had written this. An accident. God, she was exaggerating. Back then, I had just hit my head. A couple of broken ribs. That was it. I spent 1 week in the hospital. 7 days. The phone rang. I jumped. It was Sheriff Martin, a kind old man I'd known for years. "Tom, are you okay?" he asked. Catherine called. "She says someone is living in your house, pretending to be her husband." I froze. "What did you say?" She says, "You're not you." I've known her a long time, she's always been stable. A family argument? No, I forced out. Just tired. Stress. The evening dragged on endlessly. I sat on the couch, staring at an old photograph. Catherine and I by the lake, laughing. Her hands on my shoulders. The sun so bright we were squinting. I looked at us, at the small details. Her light hair catching the sun. Her hand in mine. It felt like another life. When the door creaked open, I flinched. She entered slowly. Exhausted. Her bag hit the floor with a dull thud. Her eyes were red. Hair disheveled. I stood up, holding the diary. "Kate, we need to talk." She looked at me warily, like a cornered animal. "What's that in your hands?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but trembling. "I found this. I need to understand what's happening," I said, holding up the diary. Catherine froze. For a moment, I thought she might cry, but instead, she slowly stepped closer. Her breath brushed my skin, cold. "So, Tom," she whispered. "Did you decide I'm insane? That I've lost my mind?" "No," I said. "You wrote that I was replaced. That I don't have a scar." She turned away, lips pressed tight. "Tom had one. You even joked that it made him look cool." "Listen," I said, stepping closer, feeling something twist tightly in my stomach. "It's me. I remember everything. How we met. The candles at our wedding. How you laugh at stupid shows. How you get angry when the ending is bad. I remember everything, Catherine. It's me." She stared without blinking. Her shoulders trembled. There was pain in her eyes. And terror. Like someone familiar was standing in front of her, but not the right person. "You say it like you memorized it," she whispered. "Because it's true." I shouted. "What do I have to do to make you believe me?" She said nothing. Just breathed heavily. Then she began backing away, slowly, step by step, toward her bag. I didn't realize at first. She bent down, as if reaching for a handkerchief. In the next instant, I saw the flash of metal. The knife. The same one. "Kate," I breathed. "Put it down." "Stop," she said quietly. "Stop pretending, monster." I stepped forward. She raised her hand. At first, I thought she was just threatening me. I wanted to shout, to grab her shoulders, to explain. But the strike came before the thought. Burning pain tore through my chest. The world exploded in white light. The last thing I saw was her face, so familiar, twisted with horror and despair. She stood over me, her hands shaking, her lips whispering. "Tom, where are you, my love?" And everything sank into darkness. I woke up in a hospital. First fog. Then the smell of antiseptic. The beep of a monitor. Voices. I turned my head, pain shot through my body. The doctor said I survived by a miracle. The knife had missed my heart by a centimeter. Catherine had fled. I listened, unable to believe it, as if it were all a nightmare. A few days later, Martin came by. I told him everything, the knife, the diary, her fear. He listened, frowned, took notes. As he was leaving, he turned back. "I never expected this from Catherine. Don't worry, we'll find her. When you're discharged, come by. I've got some Cuban cigars. We'll sit, catch our breath. Without thinking, I replied. I don't smoke. He frowned, as if he wanted to say something, then just nodded and left. I was alone. For several minutes, I stared at the ceiling. Then I noticed a small mirror in the corner of the room. I looked at my reflection. Pale face. Dry lips. But that wasn't it. My eyes. They had been green. Now they were blue. The scream inside. The warehouse where I work doesn't tell us what's inside the containers. Now I understand why. I needed a job. I could barely afford rent. A few days ago, I had simply walked out of my job at the bar, in the middle of a shift. My landlord said he knew a place that was hiring. He was strange, to say the least, but he seemed sincere. So you can get me a job right away? I asked. Yeah, sure. They always need new people. Kid, can you even drive a forklift? He said. I couldn't, but I was desperate. I thought, what does it matter? Yeah, I said. I can. Is it a warehouse job nearby? I asked. Yes, not far. I'll call them and tell them we've got some fresh labor, he said. He left, and I went back to my apartment. Well, that was easy, I said out loud. I was happy. I had just gotten a job. I decided to celebrate and invite my friends to a bar that evening. The next day, at 5 a.m., there was a knock on the door. I had only been home for a couple of hours. I opened the door wearing nothing but my underwear. What's going on? I mumbled. My mouth was dry, like a desert. You starting today, kid? He said. Get dressed and go. Here's the address, I wrote it down for you. His seriousness was unsettling. Before I could say anything, he shoved a piece of paper into my hand and left. The address was written on a torn, dirty scrap of a magazine. Strangely enough, that didn't surprise me at all. I got dressed and took the bus to the address. It was a bad neighborhood. Very bad. I'd always tried to avoid it, but apparently, everything has its time. I arrived at the address. The warehouse looked old, abandoned. I knocked. The door opened almost instantly. Standing before me was a tall, dark-haired, attractive man in an expensive suit. Charlie. Charlie, right? He said. Your friend said you could fill in as a forklift driver. You're on time. Come in, son. Yes. That's me. I followed him inside and saw the warehouse. It was incredible. Clean. Too clean. I could see my reflection in the floor. In the corners, cleaners in protective suits were working. He led me to a forklift and looked at me. Here you go. Use it, he said cheerfully. Don't I need to sign paperwork or something? I asked nervously. Or get a safety vest? Anything like that? I was terrible at pretending. No, we trust you. Everything's fine, he said with a wide smile. This forklift, it feels different. I don't understand. Is there a manual? I said, shaking. Different? Standard model. Interesting what you're used to then. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I felt ashamed. And scared. Before I could lie again, he grabbed a passing worker. Dean. Show Charlie how we use the forklift. He's not used to this model. The man, now clearly my boss, walked away quickly. Dean, my new coworker, spent half an hour showing me how to operate the forklift. He realized quickly that I'd never driven one before, but he didn't seem to care. Dean was strange. Straightforward and friendly, but with something unsettling about him. His face was covered in scars, like from claw marks. He was missing one ear and one eye, and didn't wear an eye patch. His head was shaved. A long red beard hung from his face, unwashed and untrimmed. To my surprise, the work came easily. There were several roles. Drivers unloading trucks, drivers stacking containers, drivers moving containers onto outgoing trucks, and drivers loading trucks. At first, I was assigned to move containers from unloaded trucks and place them in storage. The containers were about 2 meters tall and wide, like small elevators. Made of thick metal, like oversized crates. Each had a door with a large lock. As I moved the containers with the forklift, I heard dull thuds and banging from inside. Something was moving. I waved to get the man's attention. He came over. "How's it going, son?" he asked. "Fine, thanks." "But what the hell is in these containers?" I said. "I'm afraid I'll drop one if whatever's inside keeps moving. I hope I'm not damaging anything." "That's part of your verbal contract," he said firmly but kindly. "Client confidentiality. We don't open the containers. Each one has a unique barcode. We simply accept the cargo, store it briefly, and ship it back." Got it. Okay. And how much does this job pay? I asked nervously. "And how many hours?" "From 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And £333 a day, cash, at the end of the shift," he said with the same wide smile. "Okay, thanks. I'll get back to work," I said. £333 a day. That's a lot. I'd be rich working here. What a strange rate, though. And cash. Who pays in cash? From 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. would be brutal, I thought. I stopped paying attention to the container on the forklift. When I tried to lift it higher to place it on a stack, my finger slipped. I pressed the wrong button. The forklift's forks jolted, and the container fell. Part of it cracked open. I heard a short, horrifying scream. And then, silence. The scream came from inside the container. The entire crew froze, then rushed over. The cleaners immediately swarmed the container, like flies over a corpse. I looked around in panic, then back at the container. Blood was flowing from the door of the broken container. A guard grabbed me by the throat, yanked me off the forklift, slammed me to the ground, and pressed his knee into my head. The tall man in the suit ran over and told the guard everything was fine. "It's okay, son. Accidents happen. It's your first day. Let's take a lunch break while the team deals with this little incident." "What the hell is inside those containers?" I shouted. Everyone in the warehouse looked at me as if I had just pulled out a grenade. "Well, what did I tell you, Charlie?" he asked calmly. "I thought it was weapons or something like that, but there was blood." "Why is there blood?" I cried. "Are there animals in there?" He didn't answer my questions. The guard helped me to my feet and escorted me to the break room. The room was small, a couple of chairs around a table, children's toys in the corner. It looked strange. Apparently, the boss sometimes brought his child here. We talked for a long time, or rather, he talked. I barely said anything. He spoke about how lucky I was to get this job, about how the company does important work. He preached about corporate values and customer satisfaction. He said he liked my curiosity and that there was another position within the organization that I might be better suited for. In fact, after my little accident, a new and exciting opportunity had opened up. I'm sitting in the break room now. He's not here yet, but he promised to return soon and show me what's inside the container, to put my mind at ease. This job doesn't seem so bad after all. My landlord, Mr. Graves, is a great guy. I'm grateful to him for getting me this job. I'll let you know how things go.